First, I'd like to say I was 5'10" when I started. I was 5'4". That list of it's hard to believe all I've been doing over the years, but I'm driven by passion. And I grew up in a family that was politically involved from dinner table conversations, and my mother loved to get involved, but not that active. And it was Howard Dean's speech at the California Democratic Convention in 2003 that motivated me, when he said, I want to know where were the Democrats when? And it was a litany of things that, why isn't this party standing up and doing something? And then he said, I want my party back, I want my country back. And I said, he's speaking for me. So I got involved there, and of course we had a disappointment with that election. But I stayed involved, worked the Kerry campaign, was going to sit it out for a while in 2008. I wasn't going to get involved in anyone's campaign early on. I wasn't sure. And I thought I'll just wait and see who strikes my fancy. And I watched Obama's announcement speech in Springfield in February out of curiosity. It's a Saturday morning. I sat home. I thought, I'm just curious about him, and he grabbed me. There was something in that speech that motivated me to go to the computer and make a donation, and I went, who did that? Well, I guess I'm in, and started from there, and it was a roller coaster ride. But we just stayed the course, and that's something I want to talk about this president. I will talk about healthcare, but it's important to understand how he's managing this. He's the tortoise. He stays the course, he's steady, no drama. We used to say no drama Obama. Just quietly working, going in the same direction forward, step by step. And there were trials and travails, and we would panic, and he just kept his head down and kept moving forward. And surprised the whole world by winning that unbelievable election. Most of us thought it wasn't going to happen, but we were following our heart.
Yeah.
And,
Amen.
I live in San Francisco, but I live near the zoo, and which puts me in this congressional district. And that's how I ended up coordinating this part. I got involved with the Obama campaign, and when they organized, his background is community organizing. And so they said, we want you to work in your congressional district. The reason being, I've learned so much since doing this. Every congressional district is supposed to have the same number of voters. So to even out the work of working California in the primary, they wanted each congressional district to have teams so that they would deliver, they'd have the same number of voters that they had to contact to deliver. And I said, but I live in San Francisco. I don't live in San Mateo. But so eventually I said, let me do the San Francisco Daly City part of it. And it was a chore finding volunteers and organizing it, but we just kept working. Getting out and contacting voters, making phone calls, showing up at events is the day-to-day work. And that's, to me, the most fun, because I like one-on-one voter contact with people. Yeah. I'll talk briefly about the convention, because I never dreamed I would go to a national convention. And deciding that I would work in my congressional district rather than not doing what they asked us to do paid off, because I was elected a delegate from this congressional district to go to the convention. And so thank you all. And in 4 years, I'm going to ask you to come vote for me again, because I want to go back. What they did the night before the acceptance speech, I knew I was going to be on the field with the California delegation. I had my credential. I got an email. Always take your computer with you to conventions. Okay. I got an email at 11:30 that night. I had come back from a party. And they said, we're upgrading your seat. Please RSVP. I thought, it may be a scam, but what the heck. They said, thank you for RSVPing so quickly. Come down to this hotel in the morning, get your credential. I did. I didn't believe what the man was telling me, but what the heck. I followed the directions when I got into the stadium down in the bowels, and finally exit on the field, and I keep walking. And pretty soon, the last section before the podium, there was a gate, a fence. I showed my pass. Inside were 3 rows of folding chairs circling the platform. And each one had a piece of paper like this with a name on it. They said, go find your name. And I'm looking 4 seats from the center, front row, I see my name. Jeez. And let out an expletive. Wow. I'm like, holy! To this day, no one can tell me how. I think they chose 3 delegates per state at random. And I just happened to RSVP quickly, but I'll never forget it. And if you read David Plouffe's book, there's a picture of that speech, and I actually found myself in the picture. No. Because I knew where one person was and counted back. But so of course I've continued to work. This is the first president ever to keep a volunteer team. Almost every candidate has had volunteers that help them get elected. Then they get in, and it's the party that runs everything. Because Obama's a community organizer, they decided to keep his volunteer base, as we now call ourselves his field team, his volunteer field team, and it's Organizing for America, so they kept, instead of Obama for America, I always say they can keep the initials on the monograms on the towels. So we're continuing to do the work. We started with the budget that he passed at the beginning of the year. And we set up phone banks. What we do is we contact our congressional leaders, our congresspeople and our senators, and tell them how we want them to vote. This is how the Republicans have done it for years. And we used to sit back and say, you know, in '92 when they defeated health care, this is what they were doing, or '93 it was. The right-wing conservatives were mobilizing. You remember the religious right? That's when they came into the forefront. And they were making the calls and writing the letters. And the Democrats were sitting there going, what's going on? How's this happening? That's what we never did. And this is what this organization and this candidate did. I'll probably skip back and forth. The most brilliant thing they did during the campaign, and I'm reading David Plouffe's book right now. I haven't gotten that far, and I don't know if it's in there, but the secret that has not been talked about, because there was a media blackout on it. We didn't want the McCain campaign knowing this. But once he had the nomination, we knew he was going to win California. That was a foregone conclusion. So we didn't really need to campaign here for him. So you have the biggest state in the country, largest population, educated, active, eager, nothing to do. So they said, let's make California the phone bank for all the swing states that we want to win. New Mexico, Nevada, Missouri, and then others besides that. So we set up these big phone banks. There was a headquarters in San Francisco where we eventually were getting up to 200 people a day on the weekends. And then we had them running all day, weeknights, and eventually set up a couple of satellite phone banks toward the end to just maximize more people. We weren't calling California. We were calling voters in Nevada and New Mexico and Missouri and talking to them about Obama. And in those states, the field organization on the ground was thrilled because they didn't have to use volunteers to phone people. Their volunteers could knock on doors, could register voters. We registered a historic number of new Democrats last year. People were coming out of the woodworks who had never voted before and decided to register. That's how we won. So we had people doing that and tabling, canvassing, knocking on doors, but they didn't have to make the phone calls. So they could use their volunteers as boots on the ground. And this has not really been talked about much because we wouldn't allow media in. We couldn't tell people what we were doing. It was our secret weapon.